or something. Just start telling us a bit about yourself and GrappleFit, really.
Well, I started GrappleFit as a concept about 2006. I started training folks from judo, which was my base sport. Like I started working with the veteran squad, like the World Master Athlete squad, putting them through just various strength and conditioning workouts and things like that. And it was always like a sideline more than anything else. And then about 3 years later, 2 years later, I started working with Ross Pearson from the UFC while he was just fighting on local shows. And I sponsored Ross. He was like kind of the first official MMA client, if you like. And he got the win over AJ Wen to get into the Ultimate Fighter House for Tough 9. Yeah. And he ended up winning that, and it kind of snowballed from there. I became very popular amongst the MMA fighters and other sort of combat athletes in the northeast of England, and people just started to approach me for more work, and it became necessary to leave my job as a college lecturer at the time and then move into this full time. So from 2009 I've been kind of self-employed as the sort of head strength and conditioning coach at GrappleFit and the CEO. But it just sort of snowballed from there, really. I mean, like the idea of having the niche market of fighters was I've always sort of been involved in combat sports. I did judo, kung fu, sambo. I still compete in sambo now, and I'm kind of it's the niche that I'm passionate about, really. I mean, I do train regular folks. Well, I have a lot of non-fighters that train here as well. But I started off with fighters because they're just easy to train. It's the hard, like I said to you before, the hard bit is reining them in and telling them to stop. Yeah, that's the.
Instead of motivated to train.
They never come in flagging and thinking, I can't be bothered to train. It's always right what we're doing. And I could I could have a workout written on the board and literally just leave them to it while we had a chat, and they would do it. You know what I mean? There would be no. The hardest part is like easing them back. Telling them to ease off the gas a little bit, so to speak.
To be honest, I've seen that a lot in like guys that I've known, and obviously guys that I've worked with on the nutritional side, where the extra. But you hear about like the talking that, I ate a max in the gym today, and then I did 10 rounds afterwards. Like, what are you doing, man? You bit a max, go home.
It's crazy. I mean, there's a that we were talking about training smart, before we started, and that's a big thing now with me. As I'm getting older, I want to train kind of more sensibly. You can still push it, and you can still hit maxes, and you can still kind of keep pushing the envelope, so to speak. But I think the importance of training smart, even for any age athlete, is important. And I think only now the strength industry, the fitness industry is making great progress where there's enough information out there on the importance of warm-ups, We said earlier, like my warm-up used to be a few like kind of shoulder rotations. I'd circle my neck 3 times one way, then 3 times the other, and that was me good to go. And that was a competition warm-up sometimes, Where now, I have to stand in front of a radiator to warm up, before I do anything, and then a bit mobilisation, and that takes half an hour, easily. So it's kind of, looking back with hindsight, I don't think I'll be anywhere near as beat up now if I'd been training smarter in my late teens and early 20s. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people. It's getting better now. The information's there, so athletes are going to have longer careers.
Yeah, well, it's putting it in the bank, isn't it? I was talking to someone about recovering from training the day before, and I always say that if you spent say 6 years training, getting yourself beat up, and then realise that you haven't got the mobility, then you can expect working on it for 6 years to get it back to like a normal thing. So if you start working on it now, then you're not going to have that problem.
Well, the issue you've got is you're a product of your sport as well. So if you just do your sport exclusively, you're a massive product of your sport. Like I just did an article for a BJJ magazine, and we were talking about to the guy who wanted the article. We were talking about the habits that BJJ fighters have, and they tend to have like tight hip flexors from guard work, very little pushing muscles, but they've got a lot of like pulling muscles on their back. Their forearms are huge from the gripping and stuff. So they end up with shoulder issues just because of the imbalance, the lack of pushing muscles on the front side versus the lack of pulling muscles on the back side. So it's just evening imbalances out, and that's the same. It's like kind of the opposite for boxers. So you've got to work out the balances, and your body shouldn't have that many issues, you know, if you train like kind of holistically and although that the annoying word functional, it is what it is, you know. If you just do your sport all the time, you're going to end up with sport-related injuries, you know.
See, I want to touch on that a little bit more, because I didn't want to really come and talk to you about, you know, what lifts should fighters do, because everyone generally says that you should, you know, pull, push, horizontally, vertically, hinge, and then carry something, sprint or jump. But it's where accessory work that I think most people fall down in, and addressing those imbalances. Like you know, serious fighters will give you numbers, what do you bench, overhead press, deadlift, you know, that kind of thing. So I'll keep with BJJ because it's probably something that most of my readers do. Just generally because I talk about it more because it's something I do in grappling.
Yeah.
What kind of exercise would you look at that for this random person that does BJJ? I know everybody's individual, and obviously everyone's going to have individual things, but is there certain exercises or things that you found that help most people? Like, speaking in generalities, of course.
Yeah, I mean, generally, everyone can benefit from kind of hip mobility work and shoulder mobility work. Mobility work in general, right, is a big problem. So fighters, from any discipline, but BJJ as well, especially because, you know, you end up kind of fixed in one position if you're fighting from your guard, or even if you're fighting from your knees. Hip flexors are short and tight. Our lifestyle means that hip flexors are short and tight because we sit in our asses more than we ever have done, or asses. But you know, so you don't use your glutes, which is the largest muscle in the body. You know, you don't power yourself forward, and I think hip work, opening up the hips a little bit, getting them more mobile and more flexible, is vital. Shoulder work's the same because you spend your time sitting hunched over, whether you're driving, you're on your computer, you're on your phone, you're watching the TV. Sometimes you're on your phone watching the TV and you're on your computer if you're anything like me on a night and you're trying to like multitask with everything, but you're sitting hunched. So you know, 3 sets of 10 pull-ups once a week or twice a week at the gym isn't going to offset all of those hours of bad posture. So I would say mobility work around the hips and shoulders is vital. The other thing would be agility. People aren't agile on their feet, directional changes and stuff like that. And I mean, you could argue that, BJJ people don't need that, but I think generally everybody needs to be a bit more mobile and a bit nimble. Years ago, we used to be able to do it all the time because we used to have to turn sharply and avoid being eaten, basically, where we've lost. And I know a lot of trainers bang on about the caveman days and stuff, but it has changed, but it's got worse. I mean, by 2020, there's in the UK, apparently 8 out of 10 men are going to be classed as obese by 2020. So that's 80% of the population is going to be obese. You know, a lot of personal trainers will be clapping their hands at that prospect. But ultimately, what does that mean for us? It just means we're going to be a nation of fat bastards. If we ever get another war, we'll get our asses kicked.
We won't be able to do anything.
You know, and I'm not saying that I'm preparing people for war. That would be stupid.
Well,
you know?
For life's probably.
But it's just like you're being kind of functional and fit for purpose. And you're promoting longevity, whether it's just for a civil servant who wants to spend more time with their kids, having a kick around in a park, or if it's a fighter who wants to prolong the back end of their career, which is where they make most of their money. So ultimately, I would argue accessory work, including hip and shoulder mobility, agility work, coupled with the big exercises like the complex movements that yield most bang for your buck, you know. And like we said, and I say this over and over again, people who've ever read anything that I've said about and spouted off about, if you did 3 activities per week, one was lifting heavy stuff, throwing lighter stuff around and sprinting up hills, that's going to give you enough of what you need. Throwing a few directional changes and a bit like resistance band work for your shoulders, and you're laughing.
See, I think it's something that we talked about obviously before we started the interview, like BJJ people and things like that. All the exercises that they do is like static motion, you press and things like that. It's still in the static kind of thing. No one jumps or sprints and things like that. Where, like obviously it's not my field, but when people use, like in my own training, I noticed that I just became more explosive and everything when I started jumping and sprinting. Well, I always sprint like for conditioning, but just especially jumping, I only just started to add it recently, and I thought
it makes a massive difference.
But it doesn't like work in your head really for some strange reason. You don't think that jumping, like even weighted jumps or broad jumps or you know, seated or whatever, it's going to translate into being able to produce power explosivity. But I suppose that's all it is really.
Well, of course it is. It has a massive benefit once you add once you add like a plyometric or a jumping element into someone's training, not only does their mind muscle connection work better, their body composition changes as well. It's weird, you know. And you can add a bit of lean muscle to like regular folks who aren't like fighters. I've found that, you know, like a set of like even just a set of jumping squats makes a massive difference. Raises the metabolism, all of that sort of stuff. But it's ultimately it is good. You've got to pick your surfaces though. Obviously, there's a caveat. That, like everything, there's a caveat that you've got to pick your surfaces, and you've got to kind of ease into it if you've never done it before, and similarly not overdo it. It's like anything though, you know, any aspect of training, you've got to ease into it and not overdo it.
No one goes on the first day and squats 200 or
of course not. You've got to try and broad jump like 9 feet or you know 10 feet. It's like it's just.
It's good if you've got someone who did broad jump 9 feet on the first day.
I mean, but you can improve it, you know. And what a lot of people don't realise with power work as well, you need the strength foundation. So if you build a strength foundation first of all, then you can start developing power, you know. That's where it comes from.
A lot of trainers obviously say that when they're speaking on other sports. Like I know CrossFit's the big thing at the moment, but a lot of people are saying that the thing that CrossFit people lack is absolute strength. Because obviously they've got to clean, you know, 100 kilos for 15 or whatever. But if they can clean, you know, 150 kilos, then it's going to be easy, you know, obviously. But do you still that thing that applies that much in combat sports? Do you think there's people who are still doing 3 sets of 10 and not working on absolute strength and following things down? Or?
MMA is definitely one of the most progressive sports in the strength and conditioning field because it's relatively new. So they're open to ideas. Boxer, because I train 2 boxers. Boxing's the hardest one to kind of get the point across to. I've had a nightmare with boxing coaches and one boxing promoter in particular about the type of training. Oh no, they can't lift weights. He's training like a strong man. He shouldn't be flipping tires. He should be in the gym. Do it, you know. And it's like, you have a hard time because boxing's so entrenched. You know, if you're not doing your road work for 5 miles on a morning or 10 miles on a morning, it's kind of it's very. I don't know, it's like indoctrinated into boxers that they need to run for their weight.
You're not training hard
and if they don't lift weights, they're going to get tight and not be able to move. And that's not the case. It depends on your load, your tempo, how you train. There's too many variables to label weight training makes you bulky. You know, so and I've got results with the 2 pro boxers I work with that it's not the case to support what I'm saying. But MMA has been easier to kind of convince coaches because it's a new sport, so new things are getting trialled all the time, you know. But like we said before the interview, the strength and conditioning industry is amazing at the minute because there's all sorts of different like kind of methods and tricks that are coming in, and it's making a massive difference. Some of it's good, some of it's faddy, but it always you know it comes and goes. It comes in cycles, but the principles will always remain. You know, I think, to be honest, I think there's less and less people in MMA terms that are lifting, you know, 3 sets of 10. I don't think anybody does that now, you know, maybe for that accessory work or something, you know, but nothing major. I mean, every now and then I encourage like the fighters we might do like something daft like bodyweight tricep extensions. So rather than tricep extensions with a bar, we'll do bodyweight tricep extensions on the gymnastic rings, and we'll do like rope curls with the kettlebells and whatnot. And that just, you know, because everybody likes a gun show, the lads all like it, you know what I mean, especially with the summer coming, but it's just, there's a twist to it. So you're not doing your standard easy bar curls and skull crushers, you're doing something kind of different, but samey, you know.
See, we touched on running then, I know we were talking about it a bit before, like, when I'm talking about fighting, it's about cutting weight, especially it comes to the time where it comes a few weeks before and, you know, things start to get serious, where one of the first things guaranteed they always ask me is, what about running? Like, I've always ran to cut weight and things like that. And I all think depends on, I always put it on like, you know, when it comes to any type of training, you dig in a ditch and your recovery is your ability to fill the ditch. So all you're doing is if you're adding running on top of, you know, wrestling, Thai, you know, everything else that everyone's doing, you just dig in your ditch deeper. And obviously you're on a calorie restriction and everything else, so it's harder to fill your ditch back up. But I very sprinting, no doubt, I think is a brilliant thing and everybody should do it. But some people do better when they run. But I've started to look at distance that they run and intensity that they run at. You know, like, I suppose it's the old thing of rate your run on 1 to 10. or it was about 5. Well, that's probably not going to be doing that much damage.
Yeah.
Or it's a 10. Yeah, you probably shouldn't really be doing
Aye.
5 miles at a 10.
Yeah.
Is it something that ever comes up with your clients that they ask you about running and things like that?
Yeah, the boxers particularly.
Yeah.
MMA fighters tend not to. But one of the big things, I mean, a phrase I kind of coined was real fighters don't run.
Yeah.
And the idea was, I'm not down on running at all.
Yeah.
I disagree with it for fighters when it's plodding, steady state,
Miles,
neither here nor there,
yeah.
7 mile run.
Yeah.
I just think you've wasted 45 minutes. And I worked with one quite notable boxer for a training camp, and I stopped his running, and he said he felt stronger and more explosive. He lost his subsequent fight, and conditioning was blamed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't conditioning because I watched him. But it was kind of, I had the disagreement with the coaches at the time. The other 2 boxers I still continue to work with, still don't run distance, they sprint. And one of them, weirdly enough, went out a few weeks ago with some friends from the Sunderland Harriers, ran 12 miles at a decent clip, never broke a sweat, never broke a stride, and hadn't run any significant distance for about 3 years. So he knows the difference and the benefits of like the anaerobic training and crossing over into different energy systems and whatnot. But the point of the whole, the point of it is, if it suits you, if a lot of times people just like to get out and feel like they're clocking their miles up and it's just steady and they don't think about anything, just go on autopilot. Yeah. And I think that's fine. The issue I have with it is that it's damaging on your joints. It takes away your explosiveness, and it makes you kind of a one-paced fighter. Yeah. So you don't fight at that plodding pace. So if you were going to do any significant run, it should be a tempo run. Yeah. And it should mimic the pace of your fight. But that just makes it look, that kind of makes you look like you're escaping somebody if you're sprinting from a lamppost and then sidestepping and then sprinting again and then, you know, and you've got all this with your hands up. If you're trying to make it mimic a fight, you're going to look fairly odd, you know. So it's easier to just plod the streets and kind of, but it's wearing on your joints, Mike. That's the problem. For me, it's like if I said to you, hop on one foot and then hop from foot to foot, which is effectively all you're doing. Yeah. But you're travelling somewhere with it, you know. Yeah. But you're not really doing anything. I mean, there's something like 2 to 4 times your body weight goes through your ankle, your knee, and your hip with every step you take, depending on your footwear and the surface you run on. Yep. And that's just too much damage, considering the damage that fighters take anyway. You're not really helping yourselves, you know. It just goes back to digging that ditch, doesn't it? Of course it does, yeah, exactly. It's a good analogy, that. Yeah. You know, your analogy's perfect because it works on a lot of levels. I had a guy say, I'm just going to do a fat burning run. I don't even know what that is. No, what is the fat burning zone? What the fuck is a fat burning? Well, that's just bullshit. Yeah. That was proven to be bullshit years ago. And it just gets me back up when I hear people say, well, I need to do a bit of a fat burning run. No, you fucking don't. Yeah. Stop shoveling shit into your face. Yeah, look at your diet. And look at, because you can kind of, it's your diet that controls it. And it's the discipline between fighters now not doing what Ricky Hatton used to do and ballooning up in between fights because they have like 35 fried breakfasts and 17 pints of Guinness. Yeah. Now it's keeping yourself within 6 kilos of your fighting weight, you know. And that's always my bugbears. You can imagine that with guys our way, it's like, you know, getting it where you've got to always be in that distance of your fight weight, especially. Of course, within touching distance. I agree. Well, it depends obviously on the sport. Like obviously with MMA, day before weigh-ins, you get a bit of a bigger leeway. Yeah, yeah. But you see guys now, I was, you know, like BJJ's changed now completely. It used to be you'd go away in and you might have had a couple of hours before you competed. So you'd still get people trying to fiddle it and cut a little bit of water and all that kind of thing. But now, especially the bigger organisations, will weigh you in and move you to the warm-up, and then that's it, you can't leave. So you can't eat while you're over there, you can't rehydrate, you can take a small bit of water with you. Is that just a recent change, that? Yeah, some, even like a lot of local comps have started to do it. Right. Where they will literally weigh you in, say, 45 minutes or half an hour before you fight. Yes. Which is great, and I like the idea of it, especially because it stops people, or it lessens the chance of people doing something stupid for a local grappling comp. There's always going to be idiots out there who will water cut 10 pounds to make weight and then try and compete. There's always going to be those outliners, but it does slim it down.
the only problem I've got is with them, it's not organised correctly. Like I competed recently where I literally stepped on the scales and then was called fight as I got off the scales, and I hadn't even warmed up.
Right.
So, and that's happened a couple of times recently.
Aye.
But I like the idea of winning and then fighting for same day things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you diet and your training can take care of your weight really.
Aye.
Like you're adding volume and frequency of your training plus, and not a ridiculous diet.
I mean, like I said, I think a lot of people can do it. Sometimes they can do it just to escape, and fighters by their very nature are twitchy anyway. So if they've got downtime, they like to be doing something, and sometimes a run like that, it can clear their heads, and I don't think it's too bad. But it has to be in moderation, and you're not training to be, like fight events are sprints, they're not marathons. No. So why plod? And it'll just make you like a one-paced fighter. That's only my take on it. But I've kind of proven that with the fighters that I train, they've got gears to move through in a fight, so they can kind of go up and they can back off, and
I was talking to someone recently about that. Speaking of gears, about like we were talking about, obviously different energy systems used. It's not my area, but I'm geeky and I like to talk about it. We talk about that, power and strength is like at the beginning of a fight, and endurance really is right at the end. As things run out. So he was basically making the argument that you needed great endurance. I said, well, if I put you in the ring with a fighter who was a lot stronger than you and could demonstrate that through power a lot more, but you had more endurance about him, I bet you wouldn't make it into those final rounds to display the endurance. But you couldn't see it. Bit of a shame, but I like your analogy there of gears that you kind of move through.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you've got to. It's like you've got to be able to display your. It's like I said to you about the YouTube comment. Why would you train power in a fatigued state? Because you need to demonstrate power in a fatigued state later on in a fight. Yeah. So it's all well and good being able to kind of do something powerful and explosive and then sit for 5 minutes. But you haven't got that luxury in a fight. You've got to kind of constantly be moving and displaying that power and strength throughout 70, if it's a 15 minutes of fighting basically, if it's 3 5-minute rounds, for instance, for an MMA bout. So the ability to be like strong over an extended period is vital.
Yeah. We talked about briefly before about obviously tailoring exercises to fit the sport. I know with MMA, in boxing we say that obviously you're moving all the time and you need to be able to demonstrate that. But in a lot, especially things like I suppose wrestling to a certain extent, but not as much. But BJJ definitely, maybe judo a little. You go from static to power very quickly. Like, how would you go about replicating that? Like, in a standard gym, because obviously most people don't have the access to say, bands and chains and be able to work through that kind of. Yeah. So,
to be honest,
something that always seems to come up a bit that you have to go from being very static and sometimes like isometric static to explosive.
Yeah. I do a lot of like isodynamic protocols. I mean, I've got like the strikers. I tend to do you would get some strange looks either way, but I get them to do like isodynamic push-ups where you'll hold the bottom position of a push-up for 10 seconds and then you'll rep out like a clap and push-up variation or something, as one example of a conventional exercise. But the other example is like from a specific point of view, I get the fighters to do like an isometric punching range against a wall.
I've seen that recently, and
and they'll hold, and then they'll do, if it's a right hand, they mimic, and they'll do the start range, the mid range, and the end range. Yeah. Then they'll do like 3 or 4 heavy right hands on the pad or a bag or whatever. And that kind of ingrains that in. Yeah. And there's evidence that like a lot of sprinters are doing that now before, like high level sprinters are doing that now before, like 5 or 10 minutes before a race. Yeah. They'll get warm and they'll hit a 3-rep max squat. Yeah. So the fibers are twitching, switched on, and then boom, you're not running from cold,
I've read a lot of stuff about light. I've read a bit of stuff about people, like doing jumps and things like that to activate the nervous system and things like that before they do work. But the other way, before they do max work. I know a lot of some people like to do.
What they're trying to gear more towards is the maximum kind of activation, because it's neuromuscular ultimately. So the more you've got your fibers twitching and switched on, the better. So I get people, like if people are going to hit deadlifts and stuff like that, I try and get people to do like I'll get them to do a lot of like foam roller work as well, on hip flexors and stuff. But I get them to do like something like maybe like hip thrusts, or if they're going to squat, they do jump squats, and just something to get them twitching a little bit, so that it's like warm up sets used to be, doing like little kind of plyometric work and bounding and leaping, not for max efforts. I don't go for max effort, but just enough to get their legs firing or to get whatever muscle group they're working firing, so then they can hit that sort of you're hitting the ground running basically, and your work sets are more productive, you know. But in terms of like sambo and judo for our sports, it's I'd get people to do like I might get them to do like a heavy clean, and then some throws, or I might get them to do like a heavy deadlift and some suplex type work. You know? So that's your power work there. With regards to conventional gyms, you'd be stuck with like deadlifting and like maybe suplexes mimicked on a weight stack, on a bottom stack of a cable row.
I mean, like pull throughs possibly.
Something along those lines, because that would be the only way you could mimic that, unless you've got like gym assistants that you want to start throwing around as well. You know, which you know, you'd have to pay them extra probably.
I get enough funny looks jumping around my gym as it is. So,
that's why I've been out of conventional gyms for years now. It's, you know, I'm training here, and we can do what we want. There's chalk, you know, swearing's encouraged, chalk is encouraged. You know, it's you know, if you want to snot and snort and kind of grunt and swear, that's all encouraged as well. That's mainly Lanch as well that does that.
Just the swearing.
Generally speaking, If you see any of the Instagram videos, it is.
Well, I think there is like a move, especially in some gyms. Like there's one open near me that actually, like a commercial gym that has an Olympic platforms and you can drop weights, which is like, you know, massive. And
it's unheard of, isn't it, in gyms? I think they're all moving that way now, and I think, to be fair, I think that's the way it needs to go. If I'm honest, because, you know, people always say, oh, well, if you have to drop the bar, you can't hold it, you can't lift it. But ultimately, it's the eccentric movement that makes people sore. So if I encourage people to just deadlift it, I say, get it up and then you can ditch it. You know, the injuries occur in the eccentric part.
That's what I was about to say. It's like, that's where most injuries occur, isn't it? Really?
And you've only got to like lift it up and you can let it drop. You know, you know, if it fits in with that workout at that present time. But ultimately, I think there's an evolution of like garage gyms and basement gyms and factory units set up as gyms. CrossFit boxes, they're the thing that's on the rise at the moment. But it's, you know, one good thing I would say about CrossFit is that it's introduced the use of barbells to people across
the board.
You know?
I know a lot of people give it, you know, a lot of grief and things like that about injuries, but I always say that that's a coaching problem, not a sport problem. You know, there's subpar coaching in any sport bring injury. So, and it gets people, it's fair enough, no one in our sport's looking at to be the best at exercising, which is essentially what CrossFit is, isn't it, really, which is the joke. But it's got that many people, you know, moving with barbells and thinking about, you know, deadlifting, squatting and cleaning.
Fair enough. And pull-ups as well. I mean, you know, I mean, people used to work their back with like pull-downs, which was an isolation exercise, but now people are starting to think about pull-ups, kipping pull-ups, muscle-ups, and it's like, it's introduced a whole range of gymnastic movements, which, you know, and movement, like any basic human movement is good, you know, so if it gets you, I would argue if it gets you off the couch, then it's not totally bad. You know, I just don't think it's not specific enough for fighters or combat athletes. It's too general and too kind of broad focused. But I mean, like I say, the thing about the barbells and stuff, it's introduced barbell training to a whole host of people that would never have come across it. You know. So it has been good in some respects.
Don't get me wrong, deadlifting something 200 times and then, you know, running for a mile, and I'm never going to do that. That's
two different things altogether. It's two entirely different fitness goals, which I don't agree with. That's one of the things, you know, their workouts of the day, I think, are just totally random, and like, you know, deadlift one day, sprint the next. Cool, well, go for it, fill your boots, but like putting them in the same workout just seems a bit stupid.
They looked at it recently, didn't they? Like all the people who took part in the CrossFit Games and who did really well in CrossFit Games didn't do CrossFit exercise, like workouts. No. They didn't do workouts in the day or anything like that. They were all doing like strength and power work, and then they were all doing it separately.
They all followed like a periodised plan. Totally different to any. They wouldn't do CrossFit workouts, not at all. If you look, and you can tell by their physiques. The people who do the CrossFit workout of the day look like kind of vegans. And as Rich Fronin looks like one of the 300.
He does.
You know? So there's no way he's doing CrossFit on a daily basis. And the other issue I have with it is the high rep Olympic lifts. Because they're too complex, I think, for your regular person.
Very technical,
you know what I mean?
Olympic lifts.
And then doing them for like 21 reps and then 15. You know, I think it's a bit much. But again, you know, there's good and bad coaching. I think if you get a decent coach, it's not so bad. But there's too many people can go. It's too accessible because there's too many people can go, pay their money for a weekend, and then be certified. Yeah. That's the worry.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, especially on technical movements, because even deadlifting, like say 60 kilos or whatever, if you make someone do it 10 times, the first 3 reps will probably look great.
Yeah.
And then, but probably the last 4 probably won't look as good. And you need that coaching to be able to say, well, your form's breaking down there. That's the end of that set. Which is everything against what CrossFit is. It's quantity over quality.
Go to your puke.
Yeah. Don't even get me started on people who puke. It's the most retarded thing I think I've ever heard of.
Well, I always like it. Used to be a standard joke at my place, and it depends. I think it depends on what you're hitting. But if you think about it as a response, it's something negative is happening if your body is kind of slowing. So it's not a desired effect. It happens, you know what I mean. I've had it happen in here before, and there's numerous factors as well where people kind of, if they don't eat, you know, they always like gag and feel a bit sick, and then if they do eat too soon before they train, but it for me, if you're throwing up regularly after a workout, your training is gone pear-shaped somewhere.
Well, it's really, as far as things go, it's one of the most stressful things you can do for the body. You pretty much wasted your workout, really. Never mind all the nutrition that you've just got rid of that you try to put in your body before you train. So
of course, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. If you puke and you forget to post your workout on Facebook, then your workout's going to waste time.
You haven't took a selfie for Instagram.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Wasted your day.
Yeah, day's wasted, so that training doesn't count at all.
I know. Just make me laugh, all that stuff.
I know, it's awesome, isn't it?
See, that's a completely gone from tangent. People pumping, you know, bumper plates from CrossFit, like you see on Instagram, like, Jesus, that's like, you know, that girl's deadlifting 300 kilos there. Hang on, they're 5s. Yeah. You know, and you're just like,
I know, it does it.
I don't, you know.
I saw somebody tagged me in a picture the other day of a guy who looked massive, and he was deadlifting 100 kilos with wrist straps on, and I just thought, fucking hell. I mean, this guy was massive. Yeah. You know, you put him next to us, you'd think, wow, he looks big. Yeah. And he was deadlifting with wrist straps on, and it was 100 kilo, and I thought, what are you doing?
See, that wasn't actually a thing, but that's an interesting topic to bring up. Like, say, like wrist straps and belts, say, not like squat suits or shirts or anything like that. But do you have a stance on it? Do you mind people pulling max work with straps or belts, or you?
Have you seen that above Steve's head there? There's a wrist strap that I've cut up just under my clock.
Oh yeah, no wrist straps. I should have probably looked around before. But so everyone different on the subject. Some people say that for max work or really heavy like triples or doubles or whatever, then you know a belt's okay. But I think it depends on your sport. If you've got a grip sport, then
I have back injuries. I've had like prolapse discs and stuff. So I wear a belt once I get near my max with deadlifts. I don't when I squat, but I do if I'm deadlifting near my maximum. I start as the weight creeps up. I'll put a belt on. More from a psychological point of view, I think really. Wrist straps, I disagree with. It's only my opinion. I might get panned for this, but it's only my opinion. I just think if you can't grip it and hang on to it, then you've got no business fucking picking it up. Yeah. And I always joke about it to people because I had an argument with a friend of mine who said when he's deadlifting, he's training his back and his hamstrings. He's not training his grip. And I'm like, yeah, but what you find is your overall strength improves if your grip improves, you know. Yeah. So kind of back off your weight a little bit, get your grip strength up to where it should be. Use fat grips, fatter bars, things like that, and you'll find that like everything else will improve just as a happy byproduct, you know. And I mean, with my sport of sambo and judo, you're grabbing jackets all the time, so your grip is essential anyway. Yeah. And I kind of like the idea of grip training and kind of hand strength, finger strength, that sort of stuff. And I just don't agree with them, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think people like the world's strongest men use them when they're deadlifting. Do you know what I mean? It's like fair play because they pull in small cars and vans and buses along. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, but ultimately, I think for the regular gym goer to wear wrist straps on a deadlift is just ridiculous. Yeah. You need to get strengthen your hands up a little bit. You know, get rather than kind of having totally dexterous thumbs from PlayStation and texting all day, grip something, do some pinch grip. Yeah, of course, yeah. I'm not saying you don't have to do that all the time, but like work your grip a little bit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people neglect it. It's the most neglected part, you know, of anyone's training. I think is the grip.
Yeah, well, it always comes with how to improve your grip strength. Obviously, like in the gym, like I said, we talk about, and I say towel hangers are probably one of the best things.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people do grip trainings and stuff like that. Plus, it's really fun when people walk in your gym from you hanging from the TRX machine by a T-towel.
Aye. No. It's a talking point, it's a conversation starter.
You do get a
couple. People say to you, what the fuck are you doing?
They just kind of walk around during a big set.
I was washing up and I got bored, you know. But it is, I mean, I've got like an old judo gi sleeve that I use for pull-ups. I've got like, I've got the Okami claw grip trainer that I reviewed. I use a lot of stuff like that, you know, but what people mistake is a lot of gi grapplers are guilty of this. They don't work their grip through a whole range.
No, there's three types of grip. Is there 4?
Well, if you think, yeah, you've got your crush, your pinch, your lever, and the other one escapes us. Can't remember. Anyway, crush, pinch. Is it static? It's 3. Is it static?
Is it 3?
I don't know. Anyway,
anyway,
I don't know. But grip sport's not my thing. We didn't say, but crush, pinch, and is it static or something? I think it might be. It could be.
I know there's
I mean, Jed Johnson's probably the man for the grip sport side of things. But there's lots of other bits and pieces you can do. Do like sledgehammer lever and just when we're messing around, you know. Yeah. But working your grip through like a whole range. So I've got the lockdown clamps from JC Santana, which mimic more gripping triceps and natural hooks of the arms. Yeah. Slightly thinner ones for wrists. And then obviously your gi as well, so you're working through that range rather than just working in one range, you know. Yeah. Obviously it leads to like overuse injuries as well, tendonitis in your elbow and stuff. But if you work through a whole range, you can strengthen your hands, and there's the extension aspect as well, opening out, because too many people do the flexion side, but don't work the extension side, so you end up with like kind of what's classed as golfer's elbow or wrestler's elbow on the inner aspect from too much flexion, so you've got to go the other way and work the extension side as well. But it's like anything, treating the body as like a whole unit and working the angles and working everything is the way forward, you know.
Yeah, like I say, it's something that I think a lot of people just kind of skip over, really.
Aye.
I think we've covered actually loads of stuff there, just for the thing. That's something I wanted to talk about. Like, we talked about there about getting more bang for your buck and training smartly and things like that. Like programming, deloads are something that everyone seems to be talking about again. It kind of died off, and then I've noticed people talk about it again. Is it something that you program in, or a lot of coaches kind of do? Well, if the athlete needs it, then they'll have one. Or some people literally like program them in and plan them in, like every 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever.
It depends who I'm working with and kind of what they've done. This week, for instance, with Ross coming off the back of the Diego Sanchez fight, Ross has just kind of plodded along and today just got a sweat on with some like little kind of intense intervals, and then so we did like basically a cardio interval and a push complex, and then a cardio interval and a pull complex, you know, for power work and stuff. Nothing major. It wasn't heavy, it was all body weight, nothing too crazy. That would be classed as a deload week or a back off week, because he's just fought at the weekend, so it's kind of, even though he's raring to go, it's just steady away. Like he sparred yesterday and it was just steady away pace, nothing major. It depends who you're working with, really, Mike. I mean, I would say the biggest thing athletes need to start doing is listen to their bodies. Yeah. You know, I mean, ultimately, and when I say listen to their body, I don't mean like kind of listen to the mental voice that tells you to pack in and stay in. I'm talking about, you know, if you feel a little bit achy, kind of, you know, back it down a little. Just ease back a little bit. Drill a little bit more than you would go live, so to speak. You know, I've got a little test for the fighters I use. You know, and I say to them on a morning, take their resting heart rate, and see what that's like for about a week, a fortnight. Get a baseline figure, like an average figure, and as a general rule of thumb, if you feel tired and you feel like you're overtraining a little bit, check your resting heart rate, and if it's 10 beats over or more than what it normally is, if it seems to have spiked up a little bit, then you might need to back off a little. And it's a sign that your body, it's one sign that your body can be overtraining. You know, and it's just being careful.
Yeah.
You know, that's all. And I mean, that's my job as a coach. It's their technical coach's job as well to notice if they're not firing on all cylinders. And it's our responsibility as coaches to tell people to ease off or to.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about before, that, you know, you calm the fighters down, they'll come in the gym with you and they'll hit like a density block or a max or whatever, and then they'll go and spar on the night, where they need to have that kind of thing where if to hit the max, they don't want to be going to wrestling for 2 hours.
I think that's, you can't constantly be smashing PBs. It doesn't work.
No, I think a lot of people are now doing it. It seems to become really trendy recently that obviously a lot of work's like 90% of your max.
Yeah.
So you'll cycle it, but when you only hit a max, you'll only hit 90% of your max, and then start again and deload. Yeah. I quite like for fighters because it means that you're not maxing out every month or every 2 months.
Well, ultimately, if you keep maxing out, you're looking at your nervous system just getting fried. That's the ultimate thing. And as you said earlier, you've got that for MMA. You've got that many disciplines to train for. You're busy all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not like if we were just working one aspect of our sport, or boxers can work one aspect of their sport, so they can put a little bit more time into conditioning. MMA fighters have wrestling, boxing, Thai, jiu-jitsu. They've got all the other bits and pieces to put together, as well as a strength and conditioning plan, and that can be the issue. People are always surprised if they come to me with it. I always get them to, like fighters, I always get them to give us a list of what they're doing. Give us a look at your weekly breakdown. We'll see where we can fit in and where's best to put our sessions. And what they don't realise is they don't kind of. They're always surprised if I say just 2 sessions a week. Well, I don't need 4. No, no need. 4's the last thing you need. You know, 2 will be enough. And it's kind of like it is just easy. Reining them in, as I said before, because that's the thing where I feel they need to do a run. No, you don't. Yeah. You really don't need to do anything on top of kind of what you're doing already, Because some of these guys are training 3 times a day, And
that's the thing. I think that, especially when it comes to MMA, that not a lot of people are looking at that. Where, say, I hate to use the example, bodybuilders basically can have training days and non-training days because their intensity is roughly the same.
Yeah.
And volume, etc. But when it comes to MMA, especially like what I look at when it comes to nutrition, is say if you're doing, hard pads in the morning, then wrestling on a night, it's a lot different from doing, drills on the morning and then doing, more light work on the night. Things vary, and I think that a lot of people need to look at the training as it goes up and down, like you were saying, that they can't just go, well, all training is created equal, because it's not.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I agree. If I get an MMA fighter who comes and has a look at a program and says, will you have a look at this, where can I fit in some conditioning, I'll try and make it so that they're doing high intensity either morning or evening, and at the opposite end of the day low intensity. So say for instance Monday morning's high intense sparring, Monday evening would be kind of back off work, drills and technical pads maybe. Tuesday morning might be live wrestling, Tuesday evening might, so you're all getting high low, up to a point, that's just a very general broad stroke rule of thumb, but ultimately that would be the kind of emphasis you want, so that the nervous system's not getting beat up, and you're not constantly working the same energy systems, which is going to ultimately fry them and lead them over training. Yeah,
well, it's something that we always talk about, that I don't think a lot of people in other sports, especially same as yourself, I've got like people who do a lot of different sports, and they look at basically being fit or being unfit, where I think especially in combat sports you've got unfit, fit, and then fight fit. And I don't think a lot of people realise that being fight fit probably isn't very healthy.
No.
It certainly, you can't hold it for a long period of time. But still, I think a lot of people, especially at lower ends of the sport, think that they need to be fighting fit at all points. And I think to a certain extent, especially when you're like local comps, grappling and things like that, you can be. But when it comes to MMA and things like that, you definitely need to be looking at peak.
Definitely, without a doubt. And because there's always a drop off after every event. There's always a drop off where, and that could be a couple of things. That could be the fact that because they've kept their diet so tight, they have a couple of days binging on pizza and chocolate and whatever else they've missed out of their fight camp. When they get back into the gym, they always feel sluggish and slow and way less fit than you did on fight night. But that's just natural. Your body, you can't, as you say, you can't maintain that.
No.
you know, there's got to be a drop-off point.
I think it's like things like hormones and things come back into play, and, you know, especially like just on fight night or fight day or whatever, then adrenaline alone, the effects that it has on the body afterwards, it's just crazy.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Plus everything else, and there's, you know, people who do things unhealthy, like you say, people who are, some coaches are having people run for miles and miles and miles and do this and do that, and they're just eating tuna and sweet potatoes for, you know, and egg whites.
Tuna and pineapple still gets bandied about, doesn't it?
Oh,
Pineapple still gets...
To be honest, I still use pineapple and strawberries and that. It's sweet, takes away cravings quite a bit. But, yeah, just like really basic diet, you know what I mean? Uncle Steve used this for years and years and years, so it must work for me. You know, drinking raw eggs like Rocky and, you know, that kind of thing. And
well, going back to the boxing analogy, because that's the one where I've had the most trouble kind of shifting the tide and turning the tide of thinking. And I asked a guy when he was arguing with me about running, he says, well, fighters need to run, world champions run. And I said, well, why? And he went, because they always have. And that was his argument. And I was like, but why? And he went, because they just do. Oh, all right then.
See, crack on. That's my biggest pet peeve, right, in nutrition, sport, whatever it is, right, is that world champions do it, right? Exceptions do not prove rules. They just don't, right? Exactly. Just because somebody, I don't know, George St. Pierre could have eaten pizza for 4 meals a day, right? Does not mean that you should eat pizza. Like, they're exceptions. They're the very genetic elite at what they're going to do. Chances are George St. Pierre, right, could have... Everyone probably said that he could have been an Olympic wrestler if he'd have put his mind to that. Chances are George St. Pierre, right, could have done any sport and been exceptional at it because of you know the genetics that he has.
Without a doubt, I think he would have excelled at anything. But I know when he was training with the Canadian wrestling team, they wanted him for the team, didn't they?
They did,
for 2012.
But don't get me wrong, I don't want that to be a slight on George at all, because his training ethic, like, is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. No, but he is gifted. And I think he could have, as an athlete, I know where you're coming from, because as an athlete, he could have turned his hand to anything. And but that's the thing. It's like, if you remember years ago when Sean Shirk came up with caveman training, you're like, oh, I need to do that. And like, well, do you know why? And do you know where it goes in a plan? No, I'm going to put a gas mask on and just run like fuck.
I don't talk about gas masks.
It just doesn't, like, you know, like, or Vanderlei Silva with a snorkel. Let's do that. But why? Do you know why you're doing it? Do you know where it goes in your plan? And as you said before, the internet allows people to become experts
without having done it.
Without having any kind of knowledge. And I mean, I think it's a great thing, because it's opened up information if you know where you're looking for it from, and you've got it from the right sources.
I think